Hello again. Tool time once more. I received a request for how do you clean the bottom of a mortise. And in the question, the asker of the question said, there are times that you get gunk down in there that's so ossified, it's so hard and nasty that no amount of brushes or Q-tips or alcohol has much effect. It's almost like like cement or something. So yeah, that's a problem, and there's two ways to do it. One you won't be interested in, and I don't even recommend for an assortment of reasons, but I'll cover it first because it seems so logical. You think, well, if I just have the right reamer, that'll do it. And in theory, yes. There's two things wrong with using a reamer for this task, though. One is you have to have a full set. If you're working on a variety of pipes and not just making your own pipes where you use 3 sizes of tenons or something, you have to have a full set, like pin gauges, except these guys, in order to find one that's just exactly the right size. It'll cut that stuff out of the bottom without removing wood in the hole. And they're very expensive when you start buying them in vast lots. It'd run you a couple $1,000s to have a full set of these things. And even if you do, there's a mine there. You can step on this and it'll blow up, which is after significant use, a pipe's mortise is no longer cylindrical or round, and it's usually a kind of a cone shape and kind of an egg shape both together. And if you're replacing the stem, you need to square that all up and get it true again. But if all you're trying to do is clean it and you put one of these guys in there and spin it, you're going to shave this hole back to perfectly round, and then the out of round conical tenon is going to be loose in there. And you go, oh crap, I just made more work for myself while cleaning that thing out. So you can use chucking reamers for this task, but I don't recommend it. Instead, and far easier and infinitely cheaper, this is nothing more than a piece of tool steel, H2, and you can buy it in, you can get it from McMaster Car, you can get it in comprehensive type hardware stores, sell raw stock. I suppose you could even take a square shank screwdriver and cut out the section. Now you do have to modify it slightly. In cross section you want it rounded on the one side, which will become obvious why here in a minute. And the edges, the raw edges of the stock that came from the mill it's not dead square. You can see there's kind of it's kind of lumpy. So you have to grind that down like a knife blade. And you want the working edge, if you're right-handed, is going to be this one. And when I show you how it works, how it's designed will then make sense. Also, it's not 90 degrees in the end. You can see that, I think. Yeah, there's about a 10-degree slope that way, so that there's a little bit of a point on the one edge, and that's deliberate, and here is why. It takes a little bit of practice to use, but it's certainly not hard. In she goes, and you can tell by feel when you're fully in contact with the sidewall. Now if I had a transparent tube, it would become more obvious, but if you push and start grinding on this thing and it's tilted, you'll screw up your mortise. So you've got to make certain you don't just use this like a screwdriver. It requires some touch, some feel, but kind of slide it in and make sure that it's in contact all the way down on both of these edges here. push it to the bottom, and then you rotate in combination. You kind of turn the tool and rotate the stummel all at the same time. And I'm doing this in a very awkward position to try to have the camera catch it. It's not as hard as I'm making it look because I'm reaching around the camera to do it. But, and out comes gunk. Actually, it's probably easier if you use your thumb like this. And what makes this thing pretty cool is that even though it's sharp, it's a 90-degree edge, and it will not enlarge the hole of the mortise. It won't affect the fit of the stem into the mortise there. It just, I suppose if you had enough pressure, I mean monstrously high pressure like a big weightlifter guy, and really pushed, you could tear the wood a little bit with this. But normally it's just going to slide against the sides of the mortise, and only the end of it is going to scrape and scratch its way around in a circle, and out comes the yucky stuff, like so. And you know you're cooked when you can look down in there with a light, and I don't think this will work either because of the way this is all, the geometry of it, but yeah, unless there's a light ring around this lens, you can't see what it's looking at down a hole. But anyway, I can see in there, and sure enough, it's as clean as you'll get it. So that is it. When you make this thing, this same deal I used for a little scraper a minute ago, from time to time, you want to do this kind of thing and keep that edge as square and as sharp as you can get it. Now the sharpness of this is far less important than that little tab scraper, but the cleaner and sharper you keep it, the easier it works. It is important that the end of it not be 90 degrees. It needs to be a little higher, and that how much doesn't really matter, but it needs to be a little bit higher on the working edge side, the one that does the primary cutting. And you want it to be rounded on the back, only because if you make it from square stock small enough to fit into most mortises, then you don't have sufficient width. If this thing is too narrow, it's going to tilt and tip. You want it to remain both of these edges in contact at all times, and the narrower it gets, the harder that is to make happen. So you want it as wide as you can make it, but if it's too wide, it won't fit in the hole. So this is the optimal width, and just let's see how much of that is exactly. And it looks like 2/10, 0.2 inches. And that's a pretty exact number. And it would be, yeah, it splits one on these, on the 32nd side. So yeah, 0.20 inches. And the raw stock, I bet you it was considered a quarter of an inch. And then I cut it down a little bit. Yeah, this started out as a piece of 1/4 inch, and by the time it got ground a little bit into that shape, it's 0.2. So that's all you need. Alrighty. Later.